Dispatches on Organizing Upgrade. You can tune in every Wednesday at the same time and same channel to hear the most amazing interviews with organizers from across the country. My name is Gerald Lenoir, and I'll be your host today. During the program, you can leave your comments and questions in the chat, and we'll be monitoring that and bringing those into the conversation. And finally, you can sign up at our Organizing Upgrade website to hear about upcoming articles, events, and videos on left organizing strategies. Today, our topic is the new again Jim Crow and multiracial democracy. And joining us today is Brianna Brown, a lifelong Texan and the Deputy Director of Texas Organizing Project, or TOP. TOP was founded in 2009 and organizing Black and Latino communities in Texas with the goal of transforming Texas into a state where working people of color have power and representation they deserve. TOP has more than 285,000 members and supporters who help lead its organizing and electoral campaigns. Welcome, Brianna. It's good to have you with us.
So good to be here and to talk organizing in Texas, nonetheless.
In Texas, yes, sir. Your home state. I want to start the conversation off with looking at this assault on voting rights that's happening across the country. There are over 360 bills in 47 states, all to limit voting rights. And I know in Texas there are bills in both the state Senate and the state House that would severely limit ballot access in Black and Latinx communities. So talk to us about what TOP's response has been and what the response of the people you're organizing.
Yeah. So what's going on in Texas right now is just the most recent egregious assault on our voting rights. I think it's important to lay that foundation that, Texas has been ground zero for a long time when it comes to voter suppression efforts. So the most recent egregious attacks are on a foundation of one of the most restrictive vote by mail applications that exist in the country already. We're just one of 6 states that severely restricts who can vote by mail. Massive voter purges that have already happened. The reduction of polling locations, insidious misinformation campaigns that happen every election cycle to confuse ex-offenders of whether they can participate or not. So the current assault on voting rights at its core makes it more difficult to both register to vote and makes it more difficult to actually cast your ballot. So what we've been doing in response is absolutely viewing this as an organizing fight, an all-out organizing fight. There is a network of really dope organizations that are on the ground in Austin doing that kind of hand-to-hand combat every day, slogging it out. Organizations like Move Texas, the Texas Civil Rights Project, and the Texas Freedom Network, playing defense. There's the work that we've been doing. We were just, for the second time, in the streets at AT&T headquarters. Their national headquarters is here in Dallas. Demanding accountability and answers. AT&T was a company that after the uprisings last year made commitments and aligned themselves with the Black Lives Matter movement, right? If you walk into their lobby now, they have a whole Dream in Black exhibition. Following the insurrection, they made commitments to not put political dollars into the campaign coffers of people who were objectors to the results of the 2020 election. What records have shown, however, especially here in Texas, is that they continue to give to the likes of Governor Abbott, Dan Patrick, one of the co-sponsors of the Dan Patrick is our lieutenant governor, one of the co-sponsors of one of the bills making its way through the Texas state ledge right now, to the tune of over $500,000. So we were outside of AT&T for the second time, making sure to connect the dots for folks and to shine a bright light on the role that they are playing specifically. And that is part of a larger campaign to really target corporations taking a cue from the work that folks did in Georgia to beat back the voter suppression laws that ultimately became law there. When they called out Coca-Cola and Delta, for instance, you saw their responses like, their Monday quarterback response. I'm not a football fan. I'm a basketball fan. I think that's what you call it, Monday night quarterback, where there was like full unequivocal opposition to the bills. Here in Texas, there's still time on the clock for companies to come out and make bold statements about not being in support of these voter suppression laws or these proposed pieces of legislation right now. And especially companies, again, that talked a good game post uprisings and then post insurrection.
Yeah, I saw in the New York Times, I think it's today, where hundreds of corporations signed a statement supporting voting rights. So that's a tactic that's being used across the country. I understand you're part of some statewide coalitions that are tackling these issues. Talk about that.
Yes. So around the 2020 election, because there are even in during the 2020 election, during every election, there are efforts by Texas Republicans to suppress the vote of Black and Latino folks in particular. To play some defense, there was a group of folks that came together, also taking a cue from our friends at Fair Fight, based there in Georgia, to make sure that there was common messaging and a common plan, to help essentially expand the electorate, right? So make sure people had good information, and we were able to do the kind of, kind of like the in real time defense that's often needed in order to protect people's ability to vote. So that coalition is together again. It's called the Texas Right to Vote Coalition, and it's made up of a spectrum of organizations from across Texas and a couple of national folks that are really interested in this question of how to maintain people's ability to, participate in our democracy at a very fundamental level. So some of those efforts that I mentioned before, the work we've done around pointing a finger at corporations, and the work that we've done to take it to the streets, has been supported by this broader Texas Right to Vote coalition.
Good. So talk to us about who are the constituencies in Texas that are supporting these voter suppression measures, and is there popular support for for the expansion of voting rights?
Right. Well, this is, they're ripping a page out of a common playbook, right, of the right wing. I think that's true for Texas, and that's true for, the breadth of this country. So the people that are supporting the voter suppression proposed bills now are the same people that don't want to make sure that our schools don't have adequate funding, or, make sure that women don't have an ability to make decisions about their health care, or, any of just kind of go down the roster. They are the right wing here in Texas, that has been, we've been under this regime for 30 plus years. There hasn't been a Democrat elected to statewide office, in that time. So it's a common cast of characters with a common, if you ask me, tired, sad, cynical playbook that we have. I love to, the counterpunch to that is that we got our playbook too. And I think that there is a real appetite. What we saw in the 2020 election, and I'll just give an example of Harris County, where Houston is. It's our largest county in Texas. 4.5 million people call Harris County their home. It's a predominantly of color county, right? So you got massive turnout from Black folks, Latinos, AAPI communities. We did a lot of work over the last several years to flip the county commissioner's court, the folks that are making a lot of decisions about how county government works, including elections. So one thing that happened in the 2020 election was that the elections budget went from $4 million to $30 million. That kind of investment resulted in things like drive-through voting in the time of the pandemic, 24-hour voting centers, late night voting, and all those things expanded the electorate. All those things allowed more participation at the ballot box. So I think that, to your question about, there's a real appetite from people across this state to participate in our democracy, and are taking advantage of these innovations that are happening, in some counties, to participate.
So what role are unions playing in all of this? Are you working with some of the major labor federations in this effort?
Yeah, unions are a part of the larger progressive fabric in Texas, and the Texas Right to Vote Coalition as well.
Good. So I want to go back in time to the 2020 elections for a minute. And, there was a lot of speculation running up to the election that Texas could flip to the Democratic column. Of course, that did not happen, but just wondering what your expectations were going into that election, and what are some of the organizing lessons and strategic lessons that you have coming out of that?
I'm reminded of one of our members who we lost to COVID last year. His name is Isaac Henry. His name was Isaac Henry. He used to always talk about how he loved being at top because we have a plan and we're working the plan. And the plan that we've been working for the last 9 years is to flip the state. And in our plan and our imaginations, it's not flipping the state for a milquetoast corporate Democrat, right? It is for our very own progressive. That plan we call Texas for All. So when elections, like big sexy elections, come around, we're very grounded in what that plan is. And I would say I was feeling the momentum and the energy of the moment. And there was optimism about us being able to shrink a very big statewide gap. Our statewide gap, depending on who you're asking, what expert, could be between 1 million and 1.5 million votes. That's a lot of people. When Beto O'Rourke ran for Senate in 2018, it shrunk to around 240,000 votes. That was huge. Like, everyone thought that was like, he didn't win, but it was like, oh my gosh, like, to get that close in a statewide election, that was amazing. So we went into this cycle with the plan, right? And knowing that we had an opportunity to really shrink that statewide gap. And that did happen. Texas was more of a battleground than Ohio was. There were real gains that were made from, the top of the ticket from what Clinton did, in 2016 to, what Biden did. So there were absolutely, gains that way. And I don't know, I will say, like, personally, I was optimistic, right? About, there's an element, we are definitely like scientists. And there's an element of like lightning in the bottle, and you got to be ready for like the moment. And I think that the pandemic plus the kind of political moment that we were in could have, right? It didn't, which wasn't surprising to us based on like what our analysis had been. But I think that there was definitely a palpable energy about, all the possibilities that were in front of us.
So can you say a little bit more about the plan? What are some of the elements of the plan that you all were implementing during the election?
Well, our plan, the essence of our plan is about organizing. And organizing, that don't happen just during an election. That happens 365 or 366, 25/8 all the time. So that is where, our work really sprouts from, is the organizing plan. So for instance, in the last election, we outreached to a unique 1.9 million Texans, mostly Black and Latino, with a goal of yes, inspiring people to take action at the ballot box, but then also inspiring other action, right? Like, how can we get people excited and motivated to take another step, to sign this petition, to come to this protest, to write their city council person, right? So the essence of the plan is born out of organizing. It's born out of a theory that centers Black and Latino voters, that says that we don't need to, it's not about convincing capricious white swing voters to come our way. Someone needs to do that, right? But where the real investment needs to be is doubling down in Black and Latino communities, and making sure there's not just big messaging or bold, like, interesting messaging, but like real substance to policies, and a real plan for people to participate, after the election is over. So, well, did I say organizing enough? It centers on organizing. We know we need to do, real voters registration here in Texas, similar to what they did in Georgia. That's a big part of the plan. And that's, part of what the, larger progressive fabric organizations do, concentrating on, doing voter registration. That's a piece of it. Making sure there's candidates that people are excited to vote for, right? Candidates that both look like us and share our values. That's an important piece of this too. Yeah.
Talk to us about how the COVID-19 pandemic, how has that impacted the work that you're doing in your plan? I know there was a lot of issues about going door to door because of the pandemic, and a lot of groups around the country switched to telephones and online organizing. What happened in Texas, and what is going on now?
Yeah, well, we found that nothing beats a conversation on the doors. Yeah. And so, we had a door knock program actually for the last about a month of the election cycle, leading to election day. Nothing supplants that, right? And we're figuring out ways to continue to do it safely. We had friends and organizations like Lucha in Arizona that gave us that playbook of how to do it, because they'd been knocking on doors safely. We paid folks as the democracy workers, as the essential workers that they were, $20 an hour. We had, lots of safety precautions, safety efforts put up so that we could make sure that the folks who were doing that canvassing were safe. But we know now, right now there are municipal elections going on in Dallas and San Antonio. This is not an off year for folks at TOB. We're knocking on doors now. We're having good conversations with people, organizing conversations with people, and hoping to move those people to action, beyond just voting. So the pandemic definitely altered the original plan of what we were going to do. And we had to, get our sea legs. And by the end of the election, I think we stood up a really a good, sound, solid program that delivered.
Good. I noticed that you referenced Lucha in Arizona and Fair Fight in Georgia.
Yeah.
So sounds like there's a lot of strategizing going on with your sister organizations around the country. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, that's amazing. We're not on an island. We are a part of amazing strategic network that is rooted in the similar plan, and we're sharing playbooks, right? And our playbook is winning. I think the thing about, what we're fighting for, it's kind of like the reference that, Dr. King made about the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. We are trying to accelerate our ability to bring, change, because we know, what the stakes are for our folks. But it is, I think that one of the some silver linings, or the things that continue to inspire me, is that there are examples all across this country of organizations that are doing the work that is not just winning elections, but really transforming our lives, and that we can, give a no-look pass to one another, or, alley-oop. I told you I'm a basketball fan. Makes it, really is building like that community. And it builds a community, not just among like staff, but like our membership too, for folks to see that you're not alone, right? Across the country, there's this movement, and we're a part of it.
Yeah.
So that's been a real highlight, being able to be, just in community with folks across the country.
And is that a formal network, or is that an informal network where you just pick up the phone and talk to each other, or is that formalized?
I think it's both, right?
Yeah.
There's some national organizations that bring us together, like the Center for Popular Democracy or Community Change, for instance. But the best is just like being able to hit them up with a text.
Yeah.
Did you,
Right,
that sort
right.
of thing. So yeah, it's a combination of both, but I think the latter is where there's been, that has the most kind of like intimacy.
Yeah, I'm also interested in how you engage Black and Brown voters in the ways in which your organization is trying to bridge the political and social divide that often exists between our communities. So talk to us about that.
Well, a lot of that, I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record, is about like organizing. And it's not just like the day, of an election. Are we talking to people about, you got to vote? But it's like, all these conversations we're having ahead of elections. We're having, sometimes well, now in this world, we're having they're all via like Zoom, but, over pizza or over milkshakes or something like that. But an essential part of, the work we do is around political education and just and connecting dots, and folks having a real appreciation for like really what's going on, right? If we were to pull back the curtain and look at the underbelly, there is a real incentive, right, for white supremacies to maintain white supremacy, for Black and Latino folks to be at odds with one another, right? So I think that in those like conversations that we're able to have with and among our membership, with more and more taking those conversations to scale over the interwebs, I think it's like really helping for folks to make those connections, right? And we absolutely believe in Texas, it is the linked fate of Black and Latinos that will transform Texas. Like it's not one or the other. So that work, both doing it at a granular level and figuring out how to do it, at scale, is really important.
We have a question in the chat from Max Elbaum. Max is asking, what % of the population in Texas is Black and Latinx?
I might not get the percentages exactly right. I'm afraid of like misquoting, because we can always Google. I will say, so Texas is home to the second largest population of Black folks in the country. There are 3.7 million Black people here. I think people are surprised by that a lot of times. We're right behind New York State when it comes to just the number of Black people that call Texas home. And then we have the second largest number of Black registered voters in the country, right behind Georgia. So, and the same thing is, and we have another 700,000 Black folks that are eligible to vote, but not registered to vote. The numbers for the Latino community, for instance, I know that we have 1.2 million Latinos that are eligible to vote, but not registered to vote. And I believe Texas is right behind California when it comes to just population numbers of the amount of Latinos that call, Texas home. And, lots of folks here, both the members and our staff make the distinction between the border having crossed them and them and their families, and not the other way around. But I'm sure we could. If I could multitask, I would also Google real quick just to, check my math.
We have about 5 minutes left. So if there's any questions that people want to ask, please drop it in the chat. Brianna, before the program started, we talked about the what did you call it? The Abbott blackout? Is that
outage?
the Abbott outage?
Yeah.
So, talk to us about how that impacted Black and Latinx communities, and what the organizing looks like around that is trying to address the infrastructure issues and the lack of attention to really basic needs.
Yeah, talk about playbooks. I mean, the playbook of the right wing in Texas has been to deregulate everything over the last, several decades, not invest in infrastructure. And what happens at crises, whether that's the Abbott outage or that's Hurricane Harvey, you see folks on the front lines, Black and Latino folks, feel it a lot different, right? And feel it a lot more, it's a lot more potent, it's a lot more intense. And it reveals, for other people, a lot of times, what the inequities are. So we have been, very conscientious about calling it Abbott outage, because it wasn't because people had their thermostats at 68 that we didn't have any power. It was because of those decades of deregulation and the disinvestment in infrastructure. And we've been liking it to, it wasn't just the hurricane in Katrina, it was the levees that broke, right? That caused like that kind of devastation. So after, during, a lot of us, like staff wise and our members, were directly impacted. I lost, power for 3 days, was camping at a neighbor's house. We were organizing the whole way through. We stood up a relief fund along with 4 other organizations. It's called the Power Up Relief Fund, where we were raising money to be able to give direct cash assistance to families, in stepping in where the state should be able to step in, but of course is not. So we're just about actually to do our first distributions of that money that we raised this weekend in each of our counties, and 3 of our counties, here in Texas, is you'll be able to give, hopefully 2,000 families at least up to $1,000 of direct cash assistance. So that's one of the things that we did. We launched our Texas for All campaign. It was in a moment where we were all experiencing the same kind of mayhem that was avoidable. And again, us and a network of other organizations launched what we're calling Texas for All. And it's an effort to both define an alternative to the right wing and set us up, hopefully, to be able to mount a real challenge to Abbott and his cronies in the 2022 governor's election.
All right, we have time for one more question. Lenoir, Renee has a question. If you could put it up on the screen, we'll take that and then we'll sign out. Hello from Baltimore. Thanks so much for sharing about your political education strategy. Talk about some of the strength of your PE program and advice you have for folks for building their own PE program.
Well, there are some really great resources that already exist. I'm looking at one of them that I got from a training called Runaway Iniquity, and we've been able to take things and tailor them to Texas, right? So one, I like to encourage people, you don't have to, it's not about, there's a lot of really great material that's out there, and you don't have to start, from scratch. You can revamp and kind of renovate things that are already out there. So that's like one thing that, helped us to, immediately be able to have conversations about what is racial capitalism, for instance. I think the other thing is, we don't go into the conversation with an assumption or thinking, okay, this is going to be, roses and unicorns, right? These are tough conversations and they take a long time to have really well. So I think the other thing that, we're really conscientious of is helping to prime the walls, right? When people come into these conversations, and doing a lot of work ahead of time to, help folks come in their best selves, and then also creating space in the actual meetings for people to, to be themselves, which means that they're not going to be talking from a textbook. They're going to be talking from experience and wrestle and grapple with those things. And it's not always pretty. It's messy. Like it's not, there's nothing with a, nice bow on it, at all. And I think when we emerge from those conversations, it through the rigor of them, we are better, right? We better emerge. So I think that's another piece of advice is not to go in them knowing that there's going to be tension. You're going to have to grapple with things, and people, if you're doing it right, I think people are really making a commitment to opening up and being vulnerable, and pushing through, right? Well, that's a couple pieces of advice. Do not start. There's a lot of really great things to use, and then taking real time with how you come to the conversation.
That's all we have time for. Brianna Brown, thank you so much. That was a very enlightening conversation. I appreciate you.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Gerald.
Yes. All right. And thank you everyone for joining us in this conversation. That's all we have time for. Please like us and subscribe to this channel. Go to our Organizing Upgrade website and sign up to get notices of new events and articles and videos. Thank you very much. Thank you to the technical crew, and join us every Wednesday at this same time, same channel.